Hello. Some friends of mine asked for me to tell some stories about when I sailed to Hawaii when I was 18 years old with one other person who was a physicist, and he was going to take a job at the University of Hawaii to be a physics professor. So the first thing that happened was I asked him every single question you could ask. Why does the boat float? How do birds fly? How, how come, why is the sky blue? He lied to me. He said the sky is blue because of refractions. No, that might be how the sky is blue, but the sky is blue because blue goes with everything. Goes with the orange in the sunset, goes with the red in the sunset, goes with the green of grass, goes with the brown of mountains, goes with the blue of the ocean. So that's why our skies are blue. He just told me the how. Anyway, so we got on this trip. First thing happened, we'd made a self-steering device. I had just supported him in making it. So we had made this self-steering device with and we went out about 3 miles, and then we had to come right back because it just bent in half, and it wasn't even like a storm. So we took a few more days. Before we left on the second time, my mom and dad came to the docks. It was at St. Peter's Landing in Huntington Beach where we were leaving. And my mom was so nervous. She was like, oh, Karen, you're going to call me, right? You're going to make sure you stay alive, right? Don't go swimming in the big ocean, okay? She was just like so nervous. It was really cute. But what was great is by the time I got back from Hawaii, by the time I called her, rather, when I'd gotten to Hawaii 2 weeks later, she said, I couldn't handle worrying like that anymore. So I just gave it up, and I figured you'd be okay. So apparently she didn't sleep for a couple days. Anyway, the first thing that happened once we started and we had the right size, the right strength of a self-steering device, the first thing we did that happened was it was just beautiful. And you get out past the shoreline, past where you can see the shore. It's 3,000 miles, right? So maybe after 2 days, we were really far past, and we never used the motor. So we're going, and it's just water everywhere you can see. And there's nothing breaking the horizon, because the horizon is only for 7 miles. That's how far you can see, because the Earth, unless you believe the Earth is flat, but if the Earth is round, which I believe, you can see, and then the Earth drops off about every 7 miles. So once we were past 7 miles, which was like not even a couple hours, we were nothing breaking the horizon. That was probably one of my first experiences of ignorant meditation. By that I mean I didn't know I was meditating. I didn't know what meditation was, but there was something about my brain that was releasing because there was nothing blocking my horizon. It almost felt like, when you're a kid and you get the golf ball and you open up the golf ball and it's another tiny ball inside that's wrapped with rubber bands, and if you've taken it out, the bands will just go like that. That's what happened to my brain. Or at least I felt like that. I felt like my brain was unwinding. Then, one day, I was listening to a Bach harpsichord music, and I was reading. My partner Peter, he was asleep down below, but the music was down below for him and up above for me, and concerto, Bach harpsichord concerto. Anyway, I had one hand in the water and one hand reading a book, and something went under my hand, and I looked down, and it was this dolphin, and the dolphin was smiling at me, and it gave me eye contact. And so I was looking at the dolphin, and then eventually I looked up, and it was dolphins as far as I could see, and they were dancing to Bach. And what I mean by that is that 3 or 4 of them at a time, there was thousands of dolphins. I don't even know if it was 2,000 or 5,000, but they were just everywhere. And they were all bouncing in beat, like coming out of the water and doing that in rhythm with whatever song was being played. But then what would happen is like 3 or 4 of them over here, and then maybe 5 or 6 of them over there. The ones over here would go, okay, they would confer and choreograph their moves, it seemed like. They'd go under the water, and then they'd come up, and let's say those ones going in corkscrews and then on their backs, right in time with the music. And then over here, these ones would do just full-on backflip, full-on backflip, full-on backflip with the music. So not all of them were choreographing things all at once, but many of them were. So you could just look anywhere and you'd see these dolphins dancing. The sun was setting finally, and I was like, Peter, try to get him to wake up. Finally, he did wake up, so he got to see the sunset and he got to see all the dolphins dancing. And the dolphins stayed there, and the one that was under my hand stayed under my hand for a super long time, just like the whole night. And eventually the sun went down and we couldn't see the dolphins anymore. Then we had there was a big hurricane maybe 300 miles away. So the waves were coming up over the boat. The waves were like 20-foot waves just crashing onto the boat. And I was asleep when this started happening. And so Peter's yelling at me, so I get up, and he's already tied himself to the boat. And I'm not tied in, and he immediately puts a rope around me. And then he says to me words I never wanted to hear, because the sail had the clue of the sail. That's the little metallic hole where you attach the sail to the boom, which is the thing that goes that way. So the mast is this way and the boom is that way, like that. Anyway, so this part over here had ripped off because the winds were strong. So he says to me what I didn't want to hear, Karen, you're going to have to climb onto the boom and sew the clue back on to the sailboat, and I'll bail out the boat. And I was like, oh no, really? And he's like, yeah, you have to do it, because otherwise we can't control the boat if we don't have a sail that works. So he helps me climb up onto the boom. I'm straddling the boom. The boat is pitching like this, and my legs are strong because I'm a gymnast, but I'm just going like this and this. And he gives me a curved needle and a leather thing from my hand, and I start sewing. And I'm sewing and sewing and sewing, and I was so focused that even though I was pitching back and forth, from side to side, depending on how the wind was and how the waves were and all of that, the sewing was my second ignorant experience of meditation. I was so focused on making the clue super, super strong that the whole storm went away, and I was calm. And I finished it, and I made it, and I checked, and I did everything I could to make sure that it was super, 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 super strong, and it was. So then Peter helped me get down, and then we put the sail back so it was on the thing, and we made it a very small sail, and we turned the boat into the waves, and the waves were still crashing over, but we ended up going up over the waves, and we ended up basically reverse surfing over the waves until, like, for hours, until the hurricane went another direction and it calmed down. We were exhausted. We slept a lot. It was intense, but it was super interesting because the focus of sewing, it changed my whole experience of the hurricane. So then we went through the doldrums. A little bit later, there was no wind, and we were in some place in the middle of the ocean, and there was no wind, and it was the doldrums. Then we went, we found out, or Peter knew about this because he's a physicist, so we found out that there was a total eclipse of the sun in Russia. So we went 300 miles out of our way and then watched the eclipse. I took a ton of pictures and found out I didn't have any film in my camera, but it was amazing. That was so cool. Then as we're going a little bit further, one night there was no moon, there were no clouds, and we were using a sextant to, Peter was. I took a class on sextants, but I couldn't do it. Anyway, it's very mathy. Anyway, so he was using a sextant, So I'm up on the deck. It's nighttime, and the Milky Way is up over our head, so dense and so bright. I've never seen it like this ever since. I've been in Africa, places where there's not a lot of light pollution. Nothing like this. This is basically, 1,500 miles. We're probably about halfway, 1,500 miles from, California to Hawaii. And so the Milky Way is just like you got why it was called a Milky Way. It was just like sparkling cream. That's how dense it was across the sky. And then over to the starboard side, there was a meteor shower. So golden light is coming down into the ocean. And then our boat goes through phosphorescence, and our boat is making blue-green phosphorescent things, on the sides and in the wake. And then what I had never even knew existed, there were flying fish coming up out of the phosphorescent water, and they were dripping light on us as they went across the stern where we were sitting. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know fish could fly. I'd never seen that. It was magical. And the whole night was just incredible. And it felt like the universe was saying, look what we can do. It felt like the universe was giving us the most spectacular light show ever. And I was just floored. I couldn't believe it. Then finally, we get to Maui. At the time, and I don't know if they still do or not, Maui had a concrete dock. So we pull into the dock. We don't have a slip yet. So we just pull into the dock. And Peter says, hey, he throws the line. And he says, can you put it around the cleats? So I said, okay. So I jump off the boat and I get onto the dock and I try to walk to put the line onto the cleat and I fall down. And this guy, he's sitting on this concrete fence and he looks at me, he goes, just sailing from California? I go, yeah, how'd you know? And he goes, because everybody does that. Because you get so used to the boat having all that movement, and then you get on something that's concrete and has no movement, and it feels like you're just moving like crazy. So finally, I was laughing. I thought that was so crazy. And then finally, I put the boat on. We get the boat all handled, and then we go, take a shower. We rent a hotel, take a shower, because it's hard to take a shower on a boat, when you have to be sailing it. Anyway, we take a shower. Oh, I forgot to tell one thing. Before we got to Hawaii, whale songs. We would play a lot of Bach and some Mozart and things like that. And the whales would, you could hear them if you were below. They would be singing with our music. Amazing. Anyway, so then we were in Hawaii. Nature. We were in Hawaii, in Maui, and so we take a shower and then we take a nap and the room is spinning. I'm like holding onto the bed because the room is spinning around because I'm so used to being on this boat. It took 2 weeks, 14 and a half days. Then we go to dinner and I'm still holding on to the table and the girl goes, are you all right? I said, no, the whole world is swimming. She says, are you on drugs? I said, no, I just sailed here from California. And we just arrived today and my body's used to the boat. And she's like, oh yeah, I've seen that a lot. Anyway, so it was just funny, so we ended up living on the boat. I went to UH for a year. I had a physics professor in UH who was so funny. He wore the same t-shirt every single day, or he had 5 of them. And he shared with us how he rigged the television with a stationary bike so that his kids had to ride the bike to generate electricity to watch the TV. I thought that was a great idea. Anyway, that was basically my story of the journey to Hawaii. And I loved living in Hawaii. I love Hawaii. I love the air. I love the people. I love everything about it, really. There's so much that I love, at least when I live there. So that's my story. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you. I hope you have a magical day. Adventure is a really exciting thing. My whole life has been about adventure in some way. I love adventure. All right, but I also love nature and the combo. There's a lot of adventure in nature. All right. Thank you so much. Have a magical, wonderful day. Ciao. Arrivederci. Mahalo.